there's no ideal starting point. The starting point is now. So you're at your starting line. So everything you have right now is everything you need to get going.
Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing all over North America. And today it's a pleasure and an honor to have a guest, not from Quebec, not from Canada, a very successful real estate entrepreneur and investor. I'd like to welcome Mr. Jason Yasuri. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So we met at a conference in the US, RubeCon, a couple weeks ago. And after seeing you on stage, I absolutely wanted to share your story with everyone because you basically have gone from, correct me if I'm wrong, but being a waiter to $300 million worth of holdings. So you must have done something properly along the way.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's more, maybe I was more willing to make some mistakes to figure out what I didn't want to do to find the right route, right? So before I get in there, wait, what drew you, because you are up in Canada, what drew you to want to come to St. Louis, Missouri for a conference? What was it about Rubicon?
It was my friend Terry. She had gone last year and she'd really said, you should really go. It's a great community. And
Sure.
it feels really good to go to events outside of Canada because
Yeah.
when we come to the US, for us, it's still a little bit of a culture shock and a different mindset.
Hmm.
And it was a great experience because also we get exposed to more people, more experiences. I find locally, then it kind of stays the same people, the same
Sure.
topics and all of this. So it was really fun. And before we dive into it and we go into your story, I just want to remind everyone, thank you for sharing this episode with a friend who could benefit from this conversation. Jason has lots to share, not only about mindset and success, but also about tenacity, about obviously real estate investing. And we'll go into all this and how he built his company. So thanks for sharing this episode with a friend, and leave us a comment, send us some reviews. I always respond to everything we get. So, Jason, first, I usually start with how in the world did you get started in real estate investing? But before we even get to that point, you were living in New York City and were
Sure.
fairly unhappy with your life. Is that how it
You know, I,
started?
I yeah, I left college. I left college with a finance degree, a business degree, but it wasn't even my choice, right? I had a girlfriend at the time, and I had to make a decision when I was, I believe, a sophomore to pick a major. And she had said, "Well, you're good at business. Why don't you just or you're good at math. Why don't you just do business?" And so I just picked my major that way. And so when I left school, I didn't really have that burning desire to go into the finance space, right? There's many times you just start new journeys, you start new beginnings, and you're just lost on what that next step is. So I moved to New York City, right? I was going to school in Eastern Pennsylvania. I born and raised in New Jersey. I moved into New York City where a number of friends were moving into, and I just started picking up odd jobs, right? So I started working in bars and restaurants, started working, doing construction work. I was doing just anything and everything of odd jobs. And for a number of years, I worked in a number of different bars. And at one moment, I had this point in my life where it's just nothing was going right. But I continued to just do the same things. And so it was that crazy scenario where I continued to do exactly what I was doing, and I wasn't getting results that would make me happy or make me fulfilled. And then I was angry that I wasn't getting results doing the same thing, right? Just so the crazy conundrum of just the cycle of life just repeating because I was absolutely doing the same things, getting me the same results. So one night, angry at the world, leaving work, I jumped on my bike to ride across New York City, right? So it's the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, and riding across New York City, just angry at everybody and anybody, pointing the finger at everybody but myself. And lo and behold, I turned down one of the avenues and I got hit by a car, and it just set me into motion where I'm flying through the air, right? So land in the ground, a minute where lose conscious for a minute, come back to, I'm trying to stand up, I have some broken wrist, end up having a shoulder was broken, a pin go in my wrist, blood all over my face. And, the car who had hit me, drove up to see if I was okay. And of course I wasn't, and they drove off. And so luckily there were some
Wow.
kids who were on the side of the park that pulled me off to the sideline, and ambulance comes. It's just another crazy night in New York City. So it's nothing big for them, right? It's just New York City. Get in the ambulance, get to the hospital, get all patched up. And in a day or so I'm out of the hospital. And all I can think about is I have to get back to this job I don't want to be at because I need to make money for rent, right? So crazy cycle where I continue to just repeat the process no matter what's happening, right? And life just keeps giving me chaos. So I had this moment of pause where at that part, I just caught myself, thinking crazy, right? Many times we just continue on this motion. We continue to stop in the moment and just ask ourselves, is this really a true emotion? And I said, listen, like I am
Mhm.
just doing the same things. So if I can't be upset with anybody else but myself, if this continues to repeat. And I
Yeah.
made a vow to myself. We called it a vow, but at that moment I just said, I got to change something. And it wasn't this magical overnight transformation where the next day, I was up at the crack of dawn, just changing my life. But I just because I didn't even know what that looked like, but I just started to ask myself if this is the right decision in the moment more and more, and slowly, perpetually, I started to grow into good habits that started to produce better results. Right, so get up early, stop drinking late at night, stop taking these crazy jobs that were just constantly putting me in bad positions. Right, lo and behold, I started to make smaller and smaller good choices, which snowballed into bigger and bigger, better choices. And, left the bar and ended up opening, in New York City, opened a bar restaurant, opened a brewery, it sold a brewery. And before I had ended up moving to New Jersey, because my dad's construction business took off. And so I started moving out to New Jersey, started helping transform the construction business that was doing about 10, 12 projects a year to about 250 at our peak before we started moving into real estate. And
Yeah.
real estate was this thing that was these two words that we kept saying we have to do. But just like anybody listening, there's a million different forms of real estate. So we just jumped into flipping homes. And what we found is that everything we wanted in our life, at that time I had met my now wife, she was pregnant with our first child. And we were saying we have to get back control of our life, right? Because even at that time, starting to make money, starting to make better habits, we still did not control our day. Our day was just run by the events of the day. And you get to the end of the day, like, man, what just happened? And the next day would just repeat.
Yeah.
So we jumped into real estate, got very busy in flipping, and it just added complexity to our overall busy day until we started moving into different projects. We started buying some rentals out of state, and that was that eye opener where you could empower teams forward without your actual effort of running to the store, meeting the tenants, like all the busy projects that can come with the day. That can be someone else's higher calling that wants to do that. So we sold off the small projects and ended up learning all about large apartment investing. That was
Mhm.
that first step where it was that light bulb moment where I've had small companies and large companies, and I saw many times they're very similar on the factions. It just you get more kinds of skill as you grow. So in 2017, we brought our first apartment building. It was a 94 unit apartment building. Brought that in
Okay.
2017, and that's been the first of many, about over 30 that we've acquired to date here around the Southeast, and it's a little over 3,000 units we've purchased, about 300 million in real estate at this time.
Wow, what a progression. I mean, there's so many different parts into this, and just to unpack a little bit. So after New York City, I just want to go back to the period where you said you were working with your father on the construction business. This must have been also a great springboard and learning experience for a lot of the stuff that you're doing now. And obviously, it's a transition. Right now, you're syndicating deals. It's a completely different than flipping homes. But can
Correct.
you kind of walk us back through those days where, when you look back, every chapter makes sense in the book given where you're at now?
Yeah, many times you can't understand the lesson until the moment's passed, right? Because when you're into the thick of it, you don't understand what is actually the thing you need to take from the moment. For decades, I didn't want to go into my dad's business because it was very tough. It was very time consuming. It was a very draining and pushing on him. It was a very niche business, right?
Mhm.
But to be able to go out there, it was great to see dad be able to push forward and succeed. That was first and foremost. Second, we continued to have, we're a bunch of Italians, right? So we continued to have our own conflict that would come with it, with this decision making, because now my little brother, who now works for me today, he came and was working alongside of us. So we all had different visions at the moment. With the part that's the thing that can be difficult with a family business is that we all want it to succeed. We all want everybody to do great, right? But
Yeah.
many times the vision can get lost because we all may see different ways to do that. Not that we don't want each other to do great, right? But at the moment we were seeing things in any path. We wanted to get dad his time back, but dad really liked to do what he was doing, right? And so we had that part where it had to be a meetings in mind that if we were going to take this next step, we had to change our roles. And many times as we grow, one of the sticking points here is that we try to grow while staying the same. right? And you see
Yeah.
this with many companies, right? You think of, there's many great lessons. The easiest one is like Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? We try to grow at the same time, doing the same things that have gotten the results at the moment that potentially worked. But to go to that next level, you have to be able to pivot and be versatile to what the moment needs for you to go and scale to that next part. So I learned a lot about all forms of construction, working with all different people, all different customers. We did thousands of projects. And so I did everything from residential to commercial. So I did everything from the work side, for the field side, to out, to the office side, to the sales side, right? So I saw all components, which really got me exposed in many different ways and a whole different parameter than I had in the bar
Yeah.
and restaurant world, where I was exposed to all different parts, from vendors all the way to the front end to customers, right? So it's always good to just change the glasses you're wearing, even though you're doing the same part. You're selling something in a different fashion here, and you're giving a service to a customer, but you're doing it through a different model, right?
Mhm.
So as you use that, you can continue to take the lessons from there, like how you talk, how you present yourself, how you approach yourself, how you market yourself, like all these things, how they can build you to either fail or be successful, right? And so that was a lot of lessons I continue to carry forward today, right? Presentation matters, like how you do things matters. And like, is everything going to be perfect? No, it's not always going to be perfect. But it doesn't mean that you just say, throw your hands up in the air. You have to say, okay, that didn't work. What can we learn from that? And how can we not have that same result again? And how can we continue to push that next step to make it better going forward?
And you got to start somewhere. So many people are like, oh, but I'm not going to do it perfectly, so I'm not even going to start. And well, done is better than perfect. So all those experiences really led you to then. And already at that point, I imagine you were working with real estate investors who maybe were hiring you because they were out of town. Was that a point where you started to see like the magic of real estate and how much of an investment vehicle it could create wealth over time?
You know, we actually didn't know the power of it until we started doing it, right? Because we just
Mhm.
kept thinking that, the words, like my dad brought up, like, you have to get into real estate, but like that just means so much. Like, so you
Yeah.
could just, you
And
could be
it's so
wholesaling,
broad.
flipping.
There's so
It's so
many ways
broad.
to get
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. And so I'll share this, is that it's real estate is powerful, but you have to do something in real estate. You can't do it all.
Yeah.
Right. And many people, they start and they try to do many different facets, and it will put them on the sidelines because they're not great at anything. They're good at some stuff, but they're not great at anything. But the people who are in the niches, they win. Right. If you go there, even for us in our investment model, we're not all over the country. Right. We're in a couple states here, but we're even in the states, we're just in a city. And in those cities,
Mhm.
we're just in the submarkets. We're just in the neighborhoods. Right. Because we
Yeah.
want to be in areas that we fully understand and that we're
Mhm.
not guessing at. Because if we get into an opportunity, one, we're not going to operate as well as somebody else who's very dialed into the market. But two, we're going to miss a ton of opportunities because we don't know what's good, what's bad. We don't know if we're in
Yeah.
the areas that are in the path of progress. We don't know if they have the good school zones. We don't know if this is a good comp set to compare competitors to what's actually
Mhm.
happening in our properties, right? So it puts us on the outside. So it's very valuable for us to continue to just be very dialed in with our approach, but open to scenarios as we continue to go forward.
Yeah. And that actually leads us to, so you started with, you said your first multifamily was a 95 units. Was that what it was?
No, it was
95?
94 units in
Not,
Louisville,
not,
Kentucky.
okay. And then can you kind of walk us back through those first days? Because I can imagine that from flipping homes and doing some construction project, like a 94 units is a very exciting. And then it seems overwhelming. And then you go through it and you're like, so, what happened next? Because you've
Yeah.
clearly built a team and you said you're very niche down.
I had started niche. So like when we bought that property in Louisville, Kentucky, I was looking for a 75 to 100 unit property. That was a BC asset built between 1970 and 2000. That was in the South Central submarket. That was $3 to $7 million. I'd gotten
Mhm.
very specific. And so I formed a team around there. I found the brokers, I found the insurance people, I found the property manager, I found investors that were targeted for that point. So I started at niche. And the reason I went bigger is because I prepared myself to understand that I could do a 12 unit, I could do a 15 unit, I could do a 20 unit, but although it may seem safer on the outside, right? It was actually less safe because the investment had more risk allocation because there was less that could cover it. And anything I did in the investment would not carry the weight it would do on a larger property. So a
Yeah.
12 unit, I can't really hire a full-time staff. I can't have someone sitting there in the leasing office. I can't have a full-time maintenance staff right part. If I do things to the bottom line, right, it's not as impactful if I have it for a 100 unit property. So it's basically buying a mom and shop pop operation, or operation for a smaller property compared to buying a larger property where I could treat it like a business. So I
Mhm.
treat it like I'm buying a business here, and the business has the ability to operate in a certain fashion that would make the most sense.
Yeah. And so then going back to that, okay, that first property, then that second property, like basically how long did it take you after your this first 94 unit to go close a
Yeah.
second one? And then realistically, at some point you type out, like starting with the 95 right off the get-go, you had to go find investors. And
Mhm.
so you didn't fully have the track record of multifamily. So how were you able to make that jump and create that credibility to go second, third, fourth, now be at 30?
Yeah, it was me honestly showing up with what I had done prior, right?
Mhm.
So people may not have known me in the real estate space or the multifamily space, but I had worked with investors, in the past on other projects. They had also followed my journey. A lot of these are friends and family that had seen me show up and say, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do," and then go do it, right? So you can't have the credibility until you have the credibility in a certain space, but you can build the credibility how you show up in other things, and that's most impactful. So when I was looking for this opportunity, I was going out to my friends and family, letting them know the power of multifamily investing, why I wanted to do it, why I was going after the space. So I was getting them to understand it and seeing if this was something applicable to their investment strategy. And sometimes not, but many times people would be interested. And so I was able to put together, call it a soft raise, but an allocation
Mhm.
of how much interest I would have, right? So I wasn't taking funds, but I could comfortably raise $1 million. So when I brought that first 94 unit, I basically raised the money in a day because I just went back to all the people that I'd already had conversations with and said, "Here's the opportunity. Here's what I want. Are you still interested?" And they said yes. So it
Mhm.
allowed the raise to happen very quickly because I had prepared them for the opportunity when it was going to show up, right? I was preparing it before it was built as a part, but I was preparing it for when I was going to find it. But it also gave me a level of support and confidence because I knew now, instead of just saying, "Hey, I got this opportunity," and going out to people, and then people would have to learn a lot, take on a lot, understand a lot in a very short timeline. And I would be more pressed because instead of me saying, "Here's an opportunity. Is this something you'd like to discuss more?" It would be like, "Hey, I have this opportunity. I have to close in 45 days. Are you interested?" And it's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure on the investor. And I've continued to do that carrying forward. So I believe I want to say it was 9 to 12 months before we did our next one because you really
Okay.
want to get the model down, right? With that first one, really work. And the next one was a
Mhm.
48 unit there in Louisville, Kentucky. So I brought about 500 units just in Louisville, Kentucky before we started moving into different areas. But we just continued to be in the same submarket, the same part, and continue to build our investor
Yeah.
Rolodex. At that time, I had started a meetup in New Jersey. And the meetup ended up growing to like 3,000 members over a couple of years. So it grew a lot just talking about
Mhm.
multifamily investing. So that was another avenue that helped us as well. So we started doing channels like that that continued to help us expand.
Yeah. And so those different channels, and I'm gonna ask questions because it's highly relevant to me because I'm raising capital for a development project right now. So in those meetups, you find that you were able to orientate people towards some of your projects because in a lot of cases, I meet people that come to the events because they want to learn how to buy
Yeah.
a small multi, and so you have to be able to make them make that shift of, hey, why don't you just come in with me instead?
Well, I did it a little bit the opposite way. I went to those meetups with the expectation of having no expectation. And
Yeah.
my goal with that meetup was that there is no meetup that's focused on just multifamily in the state. It was all like one week it's tax liens, the next week it's Airbnb, the next week it's single family. It was just like every week it was all the stuff I had no interest in, right? It was just putting the blinders on. So I was like, I just started a meetup. And so I just went out there, started talking about what I was doing. Now, the cool thing is, yes, a lot of people, like I have a lot of people from that meetup that went out and are crushing it out there, buying multifamily, just got their jump. And like that is something really just amazing to see, right? So powerful to watch that because I would go like every month we meet, I'd go through like 12 steps we do in multifamily, like how we found the market, like how we put together a team, how we raise capital. And on the other side of that, some people would be like, that is a lot of work. I'm just going to invest with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would give it all to them. Like, and they can use it great. Right. And so like Tim Ferriss has this great thing. It's called 50-40-10. Have you heard this?
I,
This thing. So it's like 50% of people are not gonna do what you do, right? Just not gonna be able to do it. 40% of it, are gonna try and go out and do it, but not gonna do it as good as you. And 10% are gonna do it better. And the cool part is the 10% that do it better give me something to carry me forward. The
yeah.
40% I can help them at least get out of the gate to do something. And those 50% are not going to do it. So maybe they'll become an investors. And so when I think
Mhm.
about that, I just go out and offer it all. And great. If they can jump in and use it, fantastic. If they can't, hopefully they've learned something they can carry forward in somewhere else or they become an investor. And if they can go and do something even, just awesome, great, it will help me forward too. And then
Yeah.
we'll leapfrog each other. We'll keep pulling each other forward.
Exactly. We can keep helping each other regardless of where in the cycle of investing we are. And some people that you might have met that were really small, and then all of a sudden they're further than you are, and then they're
Yeah, that's
the
right.
ones pulling you forward. And that's even better testament of the help that you were able to offer.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So now, okay, so you also have a big um, you have high expectations for yourself, and you maintain a high discipline. At least this is something that I remember from you of your presentation. I think it was mentioned that you've completed like 16 marathons in 30 days or something like that. At a physical level, you hold yourself at a very high standard. How has that helped you with, well, first of all, why? And then number two, how has that helped you in every other aspect of your life?
It's very easy to fall off track because you do it one day and you do it the next day and you do it the next day, and then it just continues to compound from there. Now, am I perfect every day? Absolutely not. But I get up each and every day and I work out. I get up each
Mhm.
day and I drink a glass of water. I get up each day and I meditate. Now, not every day is my best workout. Like today, I'm sore, I'm just part, but I just do it. Get up
Yeah.
and do it. And what it does is it gives me consistency in my day and it gives me wins out of the gate. So as the rest of the day comes and the rest of the day does not go to plan, I have the mental clarity to be able to focus on it. Because
Mhm.
I've done the other side of it, right? I've had many things, like the accident is just the tip of the iceberg of things that have not happened in my fashion in the past. And I can, look back at that and say, you know what, that was awful. So like everything else is just not going to work for me. Or I can say, you know what, let me take back control and let me just take control and put my focus on me, right? Because you can offer two things, right? I can offer what I give and I can offer how I react to what's given to me. That's the two things I can control each and every day. So I get up and I set a parameter of how I want to show up in my day, how I want to work up, how I want to commit myself. And
Mhm.
when I do that, I find more things work for me than they don't, just by me going out there and being disciplined to myself. Because most of our lives, we have to be accountable to something. Because like we're getting up, got to go to school, you got to get dressed, you eat lunch at a certain period, you got to go to this job. But many times, then the accountability is no longer there, and we lose to be accountable to ourselves, right? And so we
Yeah.
stop being disciplined to ourselves, and we can't understand why we can't get off this path that's not ideal for us.
And the power of having those habits as you describe, like every day I get a glass of water, I go and I work out, I meditate, but I'll do something. And regardless of how long that time span is, you will take some time for yourself. And establishing those routines and discipline are so key to get. It's in Atomic Habits, like
Mm,
when you get just 1% better each day, how much does that compound over a year? and
yeah.
and I
It's like
remember, like,
38% or something like that, 3,800% or something like that, 3,600%,
yeah,
3,800%.
and
But
he actually he starts the book with an example from one of the cycling teams where they were able to just get 1 or 2% better
mm,
for, I think it was like a 60-day period, and all of a sudden they won the world championships.
yeah, crazy. Well, you
Yeah.
you you always want the big jumps, and we're not patient enough for the small growth or the steady growth, right? And so we look at we'll call it Instagram success, where someone's just magically done something, and we want that result tomorrow. But we
Mhm.
forget to look at if we just do 1% each day, or we just do a little bit each day, right? That gets us the results. Even say for working out, like, oh, I want to work out, and so you're waiting for that 3 hour block when you go work out, or it never comes, right? But if you went like 15 minutes a day, you could do a crushing workout in 15 minutes a day. 15
Mhm.
minutes and you're on to your next thing. You're just ready to rock. That's
And
a
you have
lot more than waiting for that 2, 3 hours to come up that's never going to come.
and you already have a lot more energy, and that's what
Yeah.
we explain our kids. We have kids fairly similar to your age at 5 and 7, and we
Oh, nice.
explain to them, you have to do your bed in the morning because that's your first achievement of the day. And it
Yeah, I
may
like
just
it.
be pulling the cover, but you can already reward yourself with, hey, I accomplished something this morning. And when you walk out of your room, that's already done. So when you're going to come
Mm,
back this evening, you feel better about it. And I think too
yeah,
many people, especially in real estate, where in some cases it's very repetitive. And I'm thinking of prospecting, I'm thinking of financing and stuff, where you have to get in the habit of it so that it becomes easier, because otherwise it's new every time and you have to relearn.
I like it. Yeah, it's true. Well, you know what it is that we all want exciting, but there's some parts of our life, consistency and discipline is not boring. It allows us to be open for everything else that comes in our life because we've already been disciplined to the moments that we can control.
Mhm. And Jason, like, for those who are listening, you've clearly been successful, and you had high expectations, you put on some good habits. I kind of want to summarize it with, if you could share. There's no magic recipe. I mean, you try to put one in your book. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Like, what would you attribute your success to, so that people who are listening right now, they can walk away with three things? And if Jason was able to succeed with this, then so can they. What would it be?
You know, I've been broke, right? I've been with, very difficult times with my family. I've been in a lot of areas that just aren't ideal from a starting point. But the part is, there's no ideal starting point. The starting point is now. So you're at your starting line. So everything you have right now is everything you need to get going. And that's number one. Number two is that you don't have the perfect recipe, but I promise you, if you take one step, you're going to have three things that are happening. One, you're either going to be in the wrong direction. So, okay, cool. Don't do that again. Turn around, go in another direction. Two, you start and you're kind of on the right track, but you've learned something and now it can help you position to be on the right track. Or three, you're on the right track, right? So then you just keep going, just absolutely keep going, right? And so that's part.
Mhm.
So now you're on your starting line, you have to take a step, right? The step is going to lead you to that next step of the part. And past that, the part of the day when it's not perfect is usually 5 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, right? But we let it ruin our day, right? And so
Mhm.
you have to understand that things are not going to be perfect, because if you had perfect all the time, you wouldn't appreciate it, right? If it was 75 and sunny every day, like, no one would be grateful of just a 75 and sunny day. You'd just be like, man, okay, another day. But
Yeah.
when we have this goodness in a day, we can now take into account, because there's moments in our day, but those moments are usually passing and fleeting moments. But someone cut you off, or you get a bad email, or you put out an offer, it doesn't get accepted, right? It's a moment, but we let that moment ruin
Yeah.
our day, ruin our weeks, ruin our months because of a moment. You're not the moment, you are you. And you
Mhm.
is the actions in a series series of events and that you take, and the actions you do that get to the results. So you have to remember, you are you. You're not the moment.
And that just reminds me of, like, the power of taking two steps back. Is, as the example you use, like, you're working on a transaction, some bad news comes, it's like
Yeah.
4 or 5 o'clock, and then all of a sudden, by the time you leave the office and you go home, that's all you remember. And I know I've been in that situation countless number of times, and I keep reminding myself, as you said, it's just a moment, it's just a bad news. By tomorrow, I'll just, like, shrug it up, be like, oh, that's how we're gonna fix it. And then for me, I get home, and when I see the kids, I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
it just erases it, because they can look at me and they're like, oh, what's going on, Dad? You look like you're in a bad mood or something. And sometimes I've even made the joke or the mistake to, like, explain to them, and I know they just kind of look at me and they're like, why? Basically, like, who cares? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, let's go make dinner, let's go play
Yeah.
outside, and all this
Kids
stuff.
set a
It
lot of
doesn't matter.
perspective, because they could care less. They just want their dad.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
and then not that they don't care, but, like, those things, that's not you, and they know it's not you, right? They
Hmm.
just want dad to come home.
Yeah. Wow. Um, one final thing. If people are interested in learning more about your story, about your company, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me come on. Great questions. I've really appreciated being here. You can find my newest podcast, the Live 100 podcast with Jason Yarusi, all the podcast platforms, so Live 100. Or you can go over to Yarusi Holdings, so Yarusi Holdings. That's where you'll see everything about our investment firm.
All right, there we go. And we'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Jason, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. Should you ever be passing by Quebec and Montreal, or any in the
Love it.
region, please reach out. I do hold some meetups. In fact, we're
Oh,
holding
cool.
one tomorrow night. And
Awesome.
yeah, be
It's
a
been a
pleasure to have
minute, but
you.
I've been there before. So if I am, I will definitely put this on my docket to reach out.
Perfect. Let's do it. And to all those who are listening, again, implement. You've learned something today, put it into action. Even if you just walk away with one thing that Jason said, that'll make a big difference a year from now. So, as usual, keep researching your market, make some offers, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.